All right, strap in, everybody, because today we are taking a deep dive into giants.
Ooh, giants.
Yeah, a topic that has just captivated people's imagination for centuries.
For a long time.
And we're going to be looking at some excerpts from this text, The Origin of Man 2. It's an Arabic text.
Okay.
And it's just jam-packed with accounts and these archaeological finds and even some genetic anomalies.
So are we going to be, I guess the big question is, are we going to be tackling whether or not giants were real?
Yeah, that's kind of the mission here.
Okay, all right, I'm in.
What I find really interesting is how this source it kind of weaves together all these different types of evidence to explore this question.
It's like a tapestry of giant lore.
Yeah, it really is.
Okay, so where do we start?
Well, one of the first things that jumps out to me is just how many different cultures have stories about giants.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Like all over the world, right?
Every continent.
It's not just one isolated myth. This source mentions the race of giants that roamed the earth. The Anakim from the Bible. We've got all kinds of stuff in here.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking back to like Greek mythology.
Right.
You got like the Titans and the Cyclops.
Totally. And the source even references figures like Herodotus and Pliny the Elder.
Pliny the Elder, okay.
Who wrote about them. So
it's not just like folklore, it's like actual historical figures talking about it.
Exactly, yeah.
Interesting.
And it gets even more interesting because the source, it links these giants to specific locations all over the globe.
Okay.
We're talking like Moab, Glastonbury, Sumer, even Inca territories in South America.
Wow, so they're like pinpointing it on a map? Like giants were here?
Yeah, like X marks the spot.
That's wild.
So it makes you wonder, right, was there something real that people across all these different cultures encountered?
Yeah, I mean, if there are all these stories,
right,
and they're all pointing to specific places, you got to think maybe there's something to it.
Yeah.
But what about like physical evidence?
That's a great question. And the source actually dives into some alleged giant skeletons and remains that have been found around the world.
Ooh, okay, like what?
So there are accounts from Ireland.
Okay.
The famous giants of Moab mentioned in the Bible.
Right.
Even a skeleton named Sisogish in Ecuador.
Sisogish.
Yeah.
It's
I'm writing this down.
It's described as having unusual size and features.
Okay, so like bigger than the average human.
Yeah, like way bigger.
Okay.
And the list just goes on and on. We've got Casas Grandes in Mexico, Tepextla in Nicaragua. A giant skull was found in Australia.
Wait, a giant skull in Australia? Like how giant are we talking?
Way bigger than a normal human skull.
Okay. I mean, that's pretty hard to ignore.
It is.
But I guess the question is like how much of this is real and how much of it is just, exaggeration or misinterpretation.
You are hitting the nail on the head because the source itself acknowledges that the credibility of these finds varies.
Okay, so we gotta take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's still interest. Oh, absolutely.
Well, what else is there?
Well, the source, it gets really specific when it's talking about two types of giant skeletons.
Really?
The J type and the M type.
J and
Yeah, and they distinguish these by their brow ridges.
Brow ridges.
Yeah, like the bony ridge above your eyes.
Interesting. So they're like trying to classify them?
Yeah, like create a taxonomy of giants.
I mean, it's a good attempt.
It is.
But does that actually make it more credible?
That is a very good question.
Yeah.
Like, is it a way to make these findings seem more scientific?
Right.
When they maybe aren't.
Yeah, because anyone can just come up with categories.
Exactly.
Okay, so we got to be careful here.
We do.
So what does like actual science have to say about all of this?
That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
Like, what's the scientific perspective?
Let's get into it.
Okay, so modern science has a very specific definition of giantism.
Okay.
It's a growth disorder.
Right.
Which could explain some historical accounts.
Yeah, like people who were unusually tall for their time.
Exactly, but it's not quite the mythical giants that we often picture.
Right, like Andre the Giant.
Right, yeah.
He was really tall, but he wasn't like...
Not a mythical giant.
Yeah.
And the source, it actually connects the Tuatha De Danann.
What was that?
The Tuatha De Danann.
Okay.
They're giants from Irish mythology to this concept of real-world gigantism.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So they're trying to ground it in reality?
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm guessing the scientific community isn't exactly throwing a parade for this theory.
You are reading my mind.
Okay.
They are not embracing the idea of a lost race of giants.
Why not?
Well, the lack of solid, verifiable evidence is a major roadblock.
Right. I mean, you need proof.
You do.
And there are always those alternative explanations for large remains.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like maybe it's just a misinterpretation or an exaggeration or even a hoax.
Right, like someone trying to pull a fast one.
Exactly.
So we have to be careful not to jump to conclusions.
Okay, so skepticism is key here.
It is.
But this source doesn't stop there.
It doesn't.
Where does it go next?
Well, it goes on to mention the Genesis 6 giants from the Bible.
Oh, okay, the biblical giants.
And it even references a book on the topic by Stephen Quayle.
Stephen Quayle, huh?
Yeah. And then, of course, we can't forget about the Nephilim.
Right, the Nephilim.
So we're getting into some pretty,
Interesting.
yeah, interesting territory here.
Yeah.
And we want to be careful. We're not here to debate biblical interpretations or anything like that.
Right, we're just trying to present what's in the source.
Exactly. Yeah, just explore the topic
Okay, got it.
from a historical and scientific perspective.
Cool.
But then it takes a turn,
Oh,
like a sharp turn,
where do we go?
into some really wild territory.
Hit me.
Directed panspermia and ancient astronaut theories.
Okay, now we're talking.
Now we are talking.
This is where it gets good.
Right.
Okay, so directed panspermia, that's the idea that life on Earth was seeded by extraterrestrials.
That's right.
And that was actually proposed by a Nobel Prize winner, Sir Francis Crick.
Yeah, he's a pretty smart guy.
Yeah. So it's not just some crazy fringe idea.
Right. It's got some legitimate scientific backing.
Okay, so how does this tie into giants?
Well, the source connects this idea to the giants,
Okay.
suggesting that they could be extraterrestrial visitors themselves,
Yeah.
or even genetic creations of these advanced beings.
Okay, so like aliens came down,
Yeah.
messed around with some DNA,
Right.
and created
Yeah,
giants.
it's just a pretty wild idea.
That is wild.
But it's out there.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
And the source even mentions Lloyd Pye.
Lloyd Pye.
Yeah. And his book Intervention,
Intervention.
which argues for this.
So this is like a whole rabbit hole we could go down.
Oh, yeah, we could spend a whole episode just talking about Lloyd Pye.
Maybe we should.
Maybe we will.
Okay.
But it's important to remember that these are fringe theories,
Right.
not widely accepted by mainstream science,
Of course.
but that doesn't mean they're not interesting to think about.
No, not at all.
All right, so we've gone pretty far down this rabbit hole.
We have.
But before we get too lost in speculation,
Yeah.
let's take a step back and look at some counter-arguments.
Okay, bring on the skeptics.
So the source highlights figures like Voltaire and Immanuel Kant,
Oh, big names.
yeah, who were very skeptical of giant theories.
What did they say?
Well, they had a lot of criticisms, but the source specifically brings up their issues with polygenism.
Polygenism.
Yeah, it's the idea of multiple human origins.
Okay, so like different groups of humans evolving separately.
Exactly.
And they didn't buy that.
No, they were very much against it.
Interesting.
And that skepticism continues today.
Uh-huh.
The source points to the UNESCO statement.
UNESCO.
Yeah, affirming the scientific consensus that all humans belong to a single species originating in Africa.
Okay, so that kind of throws a wrench in the whole giant theory.
It does.
If we all came from the same place,
Right.
where do the giants fit in?
Yeah, it's a tough one. And it really underlines the importance of sticking to evidence-based conclusions.
Agreed.
So while the source presents all this fascinating information about giants,
Yeah.
it makes it very clear
What's that?
that there's no concrete verifiable proof
Huh?
to support the existence of giants as they're portrayed in myths and legends.
So we're back to square one.
Kind of?
But what if?
What if?
What if our understanding of human history and evolution is just incomplete?
Oh, now you're talking.
Yeah, like what if we're missing pieces of the puzzle?
Okay, I like where you're going with this.
Yeah.
So that brings us to the final point that the source raises.
Okay.
The concept of the missing link in human evolution.
The missing link.
Yeah. Could giants represent a different branch or stage of human evolution?
Whoa.
It's a big question,
It is.
but it's one that's worth exploring.
Definitely.
And that's exactly what we're going to do in part 2.
Can't wait.
So stay tuned, folks.
This is getting good.
It is.
So this idea that giants might be like a missing link in human evolution, that's
Yeah,
a pretty big claim.
it is.
How do we even begin to like reconcile that with what we know about, human evolution?
Yeah, is there any way to like bridge that gap,
Well, I mean, the source doesn't really offer any concrete answers,
right?
but it does suggest that our current understanding of human evolution might be incomplete.
Okay, so you're saying there could be, like, gaps in the fossil record?
Exactly.
Like maybe entire branches of the hominid family tree that we just haven't discovered yet?
Right. It's like we're trying to put together this huge puzzle, but we've only got like a handful of pieces.
Right. We might have the general picture, but
Yeah.
big chunks are still missing.
Yeah, and if you think about it, like, the fossil record is inherently fragmentary.
Right.
I mean, not everything is preserved.
No.
So it's totally possible that certain populations, maybe those with larger statures,
Okay.
existed, but they just didn't leave much behind for us to find.
So we're kind of left to speculate.
Yeah, pretty much.
And I mean, if we connect this back to what the source was saying about the Cambrian explosion, it really highlights how evolution can just take these huge leaps forward sometimes.
Yeah, the Cambrian explosion was like this big bang of life.
Right.
All these new and crazy creatures just appearing out of nowhere.
So maybe we're thinking too linearly when it comes to human evolution. Maybe it wasn't just this straight line from point A to point B.
It could have been more like a branching tree with all sorts of weird and wonderful offshoots.
Exactly.
That's a cool way to think about it.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's say for a minute that giants did exist.
Okay.
What happened to them?
Right. Where'd they go?
Why aren't they roaming around, causing chaos?
Yeah, why aren't we seeing them at the mall?
I mean, extinction is a natural part of evolution, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, think about all the species that were once here and are now gone.
Like the dinosaurs.
Exactly.
So giants, if they existed, could have faced any number of challenges that led to their extinction.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, what kind of things are we talking?
Well, I mean, a larger body size definitely has its advantages.
Right.
But it also comes with some drawbacks.
Okay, like what?
Well, for one thing, you need a lot more food to sustain a larger body.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And water, too.
Right, so if resources are scarce...
Yeah, if there's a drought or a famine.
Giants are going to be in trouble.
Exactly.
Okay, what else?
Well, environmental shifts could have also played a role.
Like climate change.
Yeah, like an ice age or a warming period.
Right.
Those kinds of changes could have had a bigger impact on giants compared to smaller species.
Because they need more of everything.
Exactly.
Okay, and what about diseases?
Oh, yeah. Diseases could have been a major factor.
Really?
Especially if these giants were, isolated populations.
Right, they wouldn't have the same immunity.
Exactly. A new disease could just wipe them out.
So maybe they just weren't as adaptable as other hominid species.
Maybe it's like that saying, the bigger they are, the harder they fall.
Right. Maybe they just couldn't keep up with the changing world.
Yeah, survival of the fittest isn't always about size or strengths.
Right. It's about being able to adapt.
Exactly.
So, okay, let's recap.
Okay.
We've got these ancient texts that mention giants.
Yep.
We've got some, questionable archaeological discoveries.
Right.
And then we have the possibility that there are these huge gaps in our understanding of human evolution.
It's a lot to process.
It is. It's a lot to take in.
So what do we do with all of this?
Yeah, like as critical thinkers, what should we take away from all this information about giants?
Well, I think the most important takeaway is that the question of giants is still open.
Okay.
We don't have definitive proof that they existed as they're portrayed in all these myths and legends.
Right.
But we do have these persistent stories.
Yeah.
And then you have these occasional weird findings that just make you wonder.
They do.
So I think it warrants further investigation.
Okay, so we shouldn't just dismiss the idea entirely.
No.
But we also can't accept it blindly.
Exactly.
We need to stay curious. Keep asking questions.
And see where the evidence leads.
And that's what I love about these deep dives.
Me too.
We get to explore these mysteries, even if we don't always come up with definitive answers.
It's the journey, not the destination.
Exactly. And who knows?
Right.
Maybe one day we'll find that undeniable piece of evidence that just settles a debate once and for all.
That would be amazing.
It would be.
But until then,
the mystery continues.
The mystery of giants lives on.
It does. So what's next?
Well, we're going to take a quick break.
Okay.
And then in part 3, we're going to explore some of the wilder theories surrounding giants.
Ooh, okay.
Including those that really push the boundaries of conventional science.
I am so ready for this.
So don't go anywhere. Okay, so we're back. And, in this final part, we're going to kind of shift gears a little bit.
Okay.
And explore some of the more fringe theories about giants.
All right.
The ones that really push the boundaries of, what we typically consider science. Yeah, the really out there stuff.
Yeah, and what I find so fascinating about these theories is that they challenge us to think outside the box.
For sure.
They force us to question our assumptions and, confront the limits of what we think we know.
It's like expanding your consciousness.
Yeah, it really is.
All right, so hit me with some of these fringe theories.
Okay, so the source mentions a connection between giants And the idea of ancient astronauts.
Ooh, ancient astronaut.
Yeah, this one's always really captured my imagination.
Mine too.
What do you make of it?
Well, it's definitely one of the more speculative ideas out there.
Okay.
But basically, proponents of ancient astronaut theories believe that extraterrestrials visited Earth in the distant past, and that they influenced human civilization and maybe even directly interacted with early humans.
And the source is suggesting that these ancient astronauts could be tied to the emergence of giants?
Yeah, that's the gist of it.
Okay, so how would that even work?
Well, it's not entirely clear.
Right.
The source doesn't offer any concrete evidence.
No.
But it speculates that these advanced extraterrestrial beings might have had technology that could be used for genetic manipulation.
Oh, so like they're messing around with DNA?
Yeah, maybe even creating hybrid beings.
Whoa, so like alien DNA being spliced with human DNA to create a race of giants.
It sounds crazy, right?
It does. It sounds like something straight out of a science fiction movie.
Yeah, but that's part of what makes these theories so compelling.
Okay, you can see that.
They tap into our fascination with the unknown.
Right.
And the possibilities that exist beyond our current understanding.
What other intriguing but perhaps outlandish ideas does the source explore?
Well, it also gets into the idea of giants as interdimensional beings.
Interdimensional beings.
Yeah, existing in a reality that kind of intersects with our own.
Wait, are we talking about parallel universes now?
Yeah, kinda.
So giants are like slipping in and out of our dimension.
It's a trippy thought, right?
Yeah.
The source actually draws parallels between these interdimensional giants and, creatures from mythology like fairies and elves.
Yeah.
Suggesting that maybe these are all just glimpses into other realms.
So maybe they exist just beyond our perception.
Right.
Occasionally crossing over into our world.
It's a cool concept.
It is, but is there any scientific basis for this idea?
Not that we know of.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean it's impossible.
Right. I mean, sometimes those scientific discoveries emerge from seemingly impossible concepts.
Exactly. So we got to keep an open mind.
Okay, so I'm ready for the next mind bender. What else you got?
Well, the source even explores the idea of giants as time travelers.
Time travelers.
Yeah, like visitors from our future, or maybe a lost civilization from our past that somehow figured out how to travel through time.
Time-traveling giants. Okay, that's a new one.
It is.
So, like, some of those anomalous archaeological findings and ancient legends could be explained by beings popping in and out of different time periods?
Exactly. It's a fun thought experiment.
It is. I gotta admit, these theories are pretty wild.
They are.
But they're also incredibly thought-provoking. What's the bottom line here? Should we just, like, chuck these theories in the fiction bin?
I don't think so.
Oh,
I mean, they may not have any scientific backing.
right.
But I think they serve a really important purpose.
What's that?
They challenge us to think critically.
Yeah.
And to question our assumptions.
Right.
They remind us that there's still so much we don't know.
Absolutely.
About the universe and the possibilities that exist beyond our current comprehension.
So they're like thought experiments that push the boundaries of our understanding.
Exactly.
Well, I don't know about you, but I find all this incredibly fascinating.
Me too. It really makes you think.
And, throughout history, many groundbreaking scientific discoveries were once considered outlandish ideas.
That's true.
So, who knows? Maybe one of these seemingly impossible theories will turn out to be true.
Maybe.
The future is full of surprises.
It is.
Well, that brings our deep dive into the world of giants to a close. We've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
From ancient texts and archaeological finds to scientific perspectives and even some mind-boggling fringe theories.
It's been quite a journey.
It has, and I hope that everyone listening has learned something new.
Me too.
Or at least had their curiosity sparked.
Yeah.
So as we resurface from this rabbit hole of knowledge...
Back to reality.
Yeah, back to reality. We leave you with this: keep exploring, keep questioning.
Keep an open mind.
Yes, and never stop being curious.
The world is full of mysteries.
It is, and who knows, maybe you'll be the one to uncover the truth about giants.
Until then, happy deep diving.
Happy deep diving, everyone.